Howdy bubs and welcome back. Today we're going to be jumping back into Breakout and we're going to be adding sound, a lose condition, and a way to see your current high score. So with that in mind, let's revisit what we currently have. We can move around, we can place the first ball for free, we have power-ups. Once we get at least 5 points, then we're able to generate a second ball, and that's all we've got. However, right now there is no way to lose the game. If a ball bounces into the bottom, it just keeps bouncing. We're going to implement a mechanism so that way if the ball does bounce at the bottom, it gets deleted. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Taking a look over at our ball, we currently are looking at the intersect boundary bouncing off the walls. This collision code just tells us if we do intersect the boundaries, we just flip the direction, stay bouncing around. What we want to modify is this portion. This tells us if we bounce, or this whole line tells us if we bounce off of the top or the bottom of the room, so 0 for the top of the screen or room height for the bottom of the screen, then flip the direction. I'm going to break off this section. So if we bounce off of the top, flip the direction. However, if we bounce off of the bottom, so the bottom of our collision box goes past the bottom of the room, then we need to implement a instance underscore destroy, which will destroy the current ball. So let's go ahead and see what this does. Now I can place that there, it bounces around, everything's fine, but if it bounces off of the screen, it is gone. So we now have a way to lose the balls and we need a way to lose the game. There needs to be some mechanism that checks for this. So what we can do over in the player, we can go ahead in our step event that we're going to create. This happens every step. This is where we're going to check if there are any balls left on the screen and if there's a means of collecting more points. Use starting ball, no balls left, and less than 5 points remaining. If starting ball is true, if this is true, then that means we have at least placed our first starting ball, and instance underscore exists of obj ball. If there is no instance of a ball on the screen, and referencing obj underscore score dot points, if the point value is less than 5 or whatever your cost is. In my case, my game charges 5 per ball. Let me go ahead and move this around so we can see more of the screen. So if we have used the starting ball, there are currently no balls on the screen, and we have less than 5 points, then we need to trigger end of game. So end of game. Right now I am just going to restart the game. So restart underscore game, game restart. And so this will place us back in the middle. Our score will go back to whatever the value it was at start, which is 0, and then we will have the starting ball available once again. So let's go ahead and test to see if this works. So I have this, I place the first ball, it bounces around, gives me some points. Oh no, it's fallen. So now I'm going to create another ball. It fell off at the bottom. we saw the game restarted immediately because I had no way to score any more points. There we go. We now have a way to mark the end of a game. It's not perfect, that's why we're going to add a little bit more components, but we at least have this portion working. Let's go ahead and add sound before we move on and complicate this. Looking back at the ball, we can see if we make contact with any of the components, we will then have it change directions. But I'm going to go ahead and show how to also add sound whenever we make any of these collisions. So at least for the first two, I want to do the same bouncing sound. Here I'm going to have audio underscore play underscore sound. And then I'm going to specify what audio piece I want to create. I have 5 sounds that I've already thrown into the game. There are 5 different wave files, 4 of them for a bounce, and 1 of them for whenever the ball bounces off the screen. And so, actually this goes down here. So no matter what, we're going to make a sound. The question is, what is that sound? So I'm going to specify here the sound that gets selected up above. By default, we're always going to use one of the 4 bouncing sounds, or if we're going to get destroyed, instead use a falling sound. So here I'm going to say sound is going to be equal to, and then I'm going to have it randomly choose sound bounce 1, sound bounce 2, sound bounce 3, or finally sound bounce 4. It has a 25% chance to pick any of those 4. You can use these, you can change up, you can add your own sounds. You can have only one sound, it's your choice, your game. Now I'm going to make this as a var since it only exists within this boundary. And then I'm going to change it up here. If we're of course going to delete the ball, I'm going to play a different sound. In this case, sound is going to be S and D fall. Let me expand this. And finally here, to finish this out, I'm going to tell it to play the sound that we've prioritized before. It doesn't have any priority and it will not loop. Now every time the ball bounces off of the walls, it will create a sound, and then whenever it falls off of the bottom, it will instead do the fall sound. Here we see, I can press space. You heard the sound effect whenever we instantly lost. And there we go, we hear the sound of it bouncing off of the edges. You can add in all of the other sound effects you'd like. For instance, every time it hits any of the blocks, you can add in your own sound effect. Maybe whenever you pick up a different upgrade, you can add in your own sound effects. And then if you want a range of sounds, you can follow what I had done and use a choose event to choose which sound you'd want. And there we go, it lost. But since we still have enough points, we're able to generate another ball, bounce around, generate another ball, it bounces off and immediately restarts. So we've got sound. If you want to add in music, you can just add it in on the player at the start and just in the create event to tell it to create the song. And similar to here, you just swap the last bit because you want it to be true for it to play the song again or loop. So that covers the sound. We now have a restart condition. Let's go ahead and modify this slightly better so that way it doesn't just abruptly end. We instead get a little bit of time to process the loss, or perhaps have some type of response mechanic. So let's go ahead and go into our scoring system. Right now we only have our current score, but One of the best parts of games is being able to compete with other people and see who has the highest score between a couple of friends. So what we're going to do is here in the create event for our score, we're going to establish a save file where we hold on to the score information. So we're going to create an initialization file, and so we're going to open this file and specify, I'm going to just call it data.ini. This is usually the default thing that you call it. And I'm going to have a little default variable name as high score. We're going to read the value from the data section called high score and grab whatever we have recorded. If nothing is recorded, the high score is 0. And then most importantly, you need to remember to close the file. Okay, so we've now opened up our save file and we've read what the highest score ever was. If there is no high score, it uses 0. And we save it to this variable attached to the object score. Now that we have this saved here, what I want to do is, currently with my setup, I have the score in the middle. I want to show the high score at all times on the left side so you know what you're trying to compete against. So in the draw GUI event, after we've drawn this information, right below it, I'm just going to specify high score, and rather than referencing points, I'm going to reference high score. You need to specify the position is 0. And now there we go, we have high score and the current score. With this, I can now see both bits of information. And now moving back to our player, rather than just restarting the game immediately, I'm going to check to see if we have gotten a new high score. So first, check for new high score. In this case, I need to see if the current points from the player, so obj score.points is greater than obj score.high score. If we currently have more points than the high score has, then update high score. In this case, I'm going to open up that same data file and rather than reading, we're going to write real information into it. So data, we're going to specify in the high score section. You can make sure whatever you called the other thing matches this. So in this case, high score. So high score, those match up. And then I'm going to write what our current score is. In our case, it is obj underscore score dot points. And then any underscore close. Now with that, I've opened the file, I've updated the new high score with the new value, and I close the file. We now have a way to keep track of the high score. And then rather than immediately ending the game, I'm going to simply have a trigger for the and now rather than simply ending the game and having the restart, I'm going to put a small timer to it. I'm going to create alarm. Let's see, 3. We haven't used that one yet. And then I'm going to specify 5 seconds, so roughly 300. And then I'm going to go ahead and for alarm 3, when that's triggered, this is going to game underscore restart. and this just restarts the game. So now let's go ahead and check that. This gets put in, and oh, of course, if we did get the high score, we'd want to actually state that we've gotten the new high score. So we can also do one little check here and say obj underscore score dot update is going to be true. What is update? Well, we're going to create it right now. Update is equal to false normally, and in our draw GUI event, if this has been triggered to be true, so if true, if update is true, so if we need to update, then that means we now have a new high score. We should say that somewhere on the screen. And so let me just copy this text, paste it right here, and I'm going to instead just say, and maybe even change the font. For this, I'm going to go ahead and create a duplicate and call this the font for the alert. And let me just make this 48, so much larger. That way it's very obvious when a new high score has been established. And here we're going to specify, we're going to use the font alert. I forgot one little thing. Currently there's an issue with how this is written. Right now it is constantly checking if the game is over, and even if we've started this process, it keeps checking and it keeps resetting this timer, so it never actually ticks down. We need to tell it when the game is over to stop checking for it. So game over is equal to false. So of course, initially the game is not over. Back in our step event, we do all of this, and then we also and not game underscore over. So it will only trigger once rather than continuously. And so as long as we have not already realized the game is not over, or that the game is over, then it goes through this whole process. And then of course, end of game, game underscore over is now true. So it won't accidentally reset this timer for us. Hit enter, press this. In 5 seconds, the game will restart and we'll be back at the beginning. There we go. Slowly making progress. It falls off. New high score has been detected. My current score is 2, and there we go. Now there's one last bit that kind of has to be addressed here. Right now the high scores are kind of capped out at being less than 5 because it'll never let us record more than that. So we're going to have to keep the pieces of information separate from each other for the score whenever you have to pay versus the total number of points you have removed as you go through the game. This is where it starts diverging significantly based off of what kind of game you want to create. I'm going to leave it up to you on how you want to modify it, but I'm going to show at least how to separate the overall score from the points that you're allowed to spend. So back over here, we're going to keep track of a number in our score. And so total points is also equal to 0. That is where we deduct points in order to purchase a new ball. In here, before we do the deduction, I'm going to have total points be plus equals, or just add to it, the current points of obj score. Remember, you have to mark that here and here. So this is going to be my scoring system. So you earn points for purchasing balls. This encourages you to keep playing the game, as you will only get points added anytime you purchase a ball. And the more points you have whenever you purchase the ball, the more you will score. This is just the way I want to play around with it. You can change it up however you want. I'm just showing you a way to separate the two things out. Now that this is in place, I'm going to go in and update in our step event. Rather than it being points, it's going to be total points. And update it over here as well. And now there we go. Let's test this out. So I lost. It didn't update anything because technically my score, actually, I can still keep playing. New high score. 5 was recorded because I purchased 1 ball, and there we go. High score is now 5. I should lose. Nothing gets updated. And so once I get to the point where I can purchase 2 balls, the high score should now say some number higher than 5. And so with that, I'm going to purchase several balls. And so it should, after this goes, there we go, new high score, and I think it should be 20 or 15, something in between there. 49. Oh yeah, because it's additive. Because the more points I had whenever I purchased the ball, the more points I would earn. So that encourages you to use fewer balls because you can earn more points the longer it runs. Again, this is just a scoring system that I had to encourage you to keep playing the game. But there we go. That's all I have for y'all here today. If you have any questions or need any assistance, just let me know. Otherwise, have a good one. I just wanted to say thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Shout out to my bad bubs, my top 5, my day ones. Y'all have always been there for me. Next up, my baby bubs, the next 5. I always love y'all's support. And finally, for everyone else, any little bit helps. Thank you to all my basic bubs for supporting me along my journey. If you want to continue receiving notifications, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell button.